and charter amendments, constitutional amendments. We have a lot of things that they ask voters to weigh in on directly. And there's really no source of information, even if you are a very well informed person who pays attention to the news, listens to news radio, things like that. There's often really nothing that you could look to help figure out whether something is, whether a tax, for example, is a good idea or a bad idea. So BGR tries to do that work on behalf of voters. We are nonpartisan, and we take a look at the facts, the data. We analyze them. We look at the need, the best practices, and our the perspective we come up with is all just based on that. And yeah, we try to help voters make a well-reasoned choice at the ballot box. And even if at the end of the day voters don't agree with our analysis, they've still benefited from being able to consider it in line with their values and their priorities to make the right decision for them.
All right. So, Mr. Nate, who are you?
Good morning.
Where you've been before BGR? What do you do at BGR? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty hard to follow up that that introduction, but I mean, I don't have as much extensive experience. Before this, I was a student at LSU. Got a couple degrees from there, and I've also worked at a public policy consulting firm and a couple of research assistantships, and then I was previously an intern here at BGR in 2023 until, I got a stroke of luck in the middle of last year and got a full research analyst position here. So now I get to geek out over all these public policy topics, especially with this tax. It was a pretty interesting project, and you learn a lot of things every single time you dive into.
Okay. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Puerto Rico, but I've been raised in Jefferson Parish ever since I was 8. So,
all right.
Basically a New Orleans resident.
Okay.
And I will say, Nate was a rock star student, a fabulous intern. He was the first intern we have ever had who wrote a full ballot report on his own, and we said, we really need to hire him.
Thank you.
I remember when you were an intern, and I remember looking at his work, and I was like, did he do this?
Yeah, that's what we said
Did
too.
the intern do this?
I mean,
That's why-
Yeah.
So I see why you made that decision.
Yes.
And we could talk more about that, but I want to make sure we
Yes,
dive into
absolutely.
Yeah,
it.
of course, yeah.
So let's do a little bit of background. So recently, there are signs out on the street, no new taxes. Is this a new tax?
It is not a new tax. It is a renewal of an existing tax. And I was very pleased to see that around last Friday, the day before the start of early voting, that there started to be some other signs
Yes.
Along the streets that
Right,
started to
right,
point
right.
that out. But no, this is a renewal of a tax. If renewed, it would generate about $12.6 million a year. It helps pay for the operations of the jail. And this is, of course, very important because, we, the public, are responsible for the people inside the jail to make sure that they are safe and that the jail is well run. And of course, our jail is under consent decree, and it's going to be, which means that historically the jail has not been reaching minimal constitutional standards for treating the people who are detained in the jail. And you really need these resources to make sure that the operations of the jail, can be what they should be.
Right. So this is a renewal. So that means that the millage that's in place was voted on by the voters, chosen by the voters about 10 years ago, and it's about to expire. Now, if I remember correctly, the first time that millage went out, it did not pass and then it did pass, but it passed narrowly. So your vote can make a difference with funding the operation of the sheriff's office. And I want to note that you said "we the people," because it's not the people who work in City Hall, but we the people are responsible for the sheriff's office. I mean, that's a part of what we take on as citizens. We can disagree about how that money should be spent, about the accountability, about the transparency, but we are responsible for that operation, just like we're responsible for electing a new mayor. So it's important that you weigh who's running, their issues, their experience, and all, because you're putting them in charge. But we, the people, are responsible for choosing that person, and in this case, choosing the millage renewal to have the operations proceed.
That's right. And one of the things, that we weighed when we looked at we look at questions of, is there a need for this? Would it likely to lead to effective outcomes? Is there accountability? Things like that. And one of the things that was clear in our analysis is if this tax is not renewed, then, the city council appropriates money that pays for, is it 80%? About 80%
about
of
80%, yeah.
the budget for the jail. If this millage is not renewed, we would need to rely more on the city council to do a greater share of the funding, which then puts the funding for the jail in competition with other funding priorities and things like that. So if this renewal passes, it just creates kind of at least a baseline of funding. I should say, and I think Nate can talk more about this, we do have some concerns about, we want to see continued improvement in transparency and accountability and things like that at the jail, because one of the things that's tricky about this is, by definition, a jail is a closed institution. It's very hard for most people to, have direct contact with it and a view of, like, is something working well? Is it not? The way you might be able to make a reasonable judgment about something that you can see, like streets or something. So we do have we do have some recommendations built into this report for how we would like to see the sheriff's office improve, the management, accountability, transparency, things like that of any proceeds that would come with this.
I definitely want to get to some of the concerns and some of the recommendations, and we'll do that after the break.
Sure.
How much of the percentage of our registered voters do you expect to turn out during early voting and on election day based on other off-cycle ballot measure only elections?
I don't actually know. There was a higher than expected turnout for the March 29th election.
Right.
However, this election is on May 3rd, which is Jazz Fest Saturday, and I believe it is the only thing on the ballot in Orleans Parish. So
there are other things on individual neighborhood.
yeah,
ballots,
individual
but
neighborhood level, parish-wide. Yes, thank you for that. So, people are really going to have to remember to turn out or get themselves to City Hall or an early voting location to take care of that ahead
Early
of time.
voting is ongoing. Started on Saturday, ends on April 26th. So maybe the better idea is to get out ahead of Jazz Fest and go ahead and cast your ballot. We're going to be talking with our wonderful BGR representatives more after the break. You are listening to WBOK's Good Morning Show. The talk line is 504-582-9422, 504-582-9422. Just a reminder for those who are watching on Facebook Live, we've posted the BGR link in the Facebook Live comments. So feel free to tap in, whether you do that and use that to ask a question now, or to just copy and paste it so that you can bookmark it and spend more time with it at another point. Again, this is Will Sutton sitting in for Dr. Sandra Wyatt on WBOK's Good Morning Show. And this is WBOK, the station that everybody's talking about.
This is your news update for WBOK from WDSU. For all your news and weather, watch WDSU News, New Orleans' leader in live, local, late-breaking news. Today at noon and 4 p.m.
Partly to mostly cloudy today, muggy with highs in the low to mid 80s. We have another chance for heavy rain and storms that could lead to flooding this afternoon and evening. Not everyone will see this, but have the rain gear handy anyway. Partly cloudy tonight, lows in the 60s and 70s, more fog possible Wednesday morning. Then afternoon showers, highs back into the low 80s. By the weekend, we're into the mid to upper 80s. From the WDSU First Warning Weather Center, I'm Raven Richard.
Hi, this is Arnie Filko. Let's elevate every Tuesday through Thursday from 6 to 7 o'clock p.m. as we discuss the community, the country, and the world, from politics to current events to sports. We look forward to your input and continuing the quality programming on your community station, WBOK. Join Carrie and I every Tuesday through Thursday, 6 to 7 o'clock p.m. on Elevated Conversations, the Arnie and Carrie Show. See you soon.
This summer, let your child's creativity shine at Camp Art, New Orleans' most vibrant, arts-driven camp experience for kids ages 4 to 12. Hosted by Beyond the Stage, Camp Art blends visual art, theater, music, dance, and creative writing with New Orleans history and culture. Plus, field trips, guest artists, and camper showcases. With full-day programming before and after care and sessions starting June 9th, it's the perfect fit for working parents. Fun, enriching, unforgettable. Register now at beyondthestagellc.com/campart and follow us on social media at Beyond the Stage LLC.
Hey everybody, it's Kimber White Dupree.
And it's Graylin Brian Banks from the front porch. We're coming up next.
Good morning, wake up.
The Good Morning Show. Good morning. On WBOK.
Sutton filling in as guest host today with the Good Morning Show. Our talk line is WBOK 504-582-9422, 504-582-9422. A reminder, the BOGR report that they produce, there's a link in the Facebook Live comments section. So feel free to tap that and take a look as we're talking. Feel free to bookmark that and set it aside. It takes some time to read, but it's for those who really care about what is it and you really want to know, this is the spot to find out what you really want to know. And frankly, the sheriff has put out information, and you can find the sheriff's first town hall, which was recorded, and you can find their podcast, and you can find some of their slides and their information. But this is a much deeper dive into what this millage is about from a nonpartisan perspective. So this report is not about who is the sheriff or who will be the sheriff. It's about funding for whoever the sheriff is as we move forward. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it with that. This report is really gauging at what has been done with this tax in the past 10 years and kind of what's the justification behind our position for. And obviously, you know, we highlight some recommendations in that they really fall into two branches. The first one is the fact that for the past 10 years, you know, revenues for this tax have just been lumped into the budget and then spent out. So if a person wants to analyze just this tax itself, It's pretty hard to do. I mean, you could look at the whole budget, but then again, you don't know how that $12 million is spent. And obviously, the sheriff reports their budget and expenditures to the council. And as well as Becky pointed out before, is the fact that voters don't easily see the performance of the jail. It's not like a street where you see a pothole has been there for X amount of days or months, or schools, etc. You don't really see that on a day-to-day basis. So what we recommend to resolve those issues is that the sheriff expands their reporting to the public in terms of how they use the tax money and just general jail performance and meeting with compliance with the federal monitors. And then the second issue is that the jail also faces a lot of upcoming costs, big upcoming costs. The biggest one is phase 3, which is set to be operational next year, which is the new medical and mental health wing.
Highly debated, much controversial.
Highly debated.
But the reality is, it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming one way or another.
And we'll have to pay for it.
Exactly.
No matter where we stood in the past, it's coming and it's going to be there.
Exactly. And, that brings on a lot of costs with, you have to hire more people, the security systems, cameras, et cetera, that all cost a lot of money. And really that hasn't been factored into the budget yet.
So let me ask you to pause right now. Mm-hmm. By the way, this is Nate from the BGR. He's research analyst. Pabon Trinidad.
Yeah.
Pabon Trinidad.
It's a long one.
Yes. Right. Okay. So that's who you've been listening to. One of the things that I like about what you did was looking at the staffing of the jail, of the sheriff's office, in the jail in particular, because that's like the biggest thing that people recognize when they think sheriff's office. They're sheriff's deputies serving subpoenas. They're sheriff's deputies in our courtrooms to maintain decorum and security. They do a number of other things in the community outside of their courthouse and outside of jail. But the number you have here for the total jail staff is 743, with the number of vacancies 211.
Yeah.
And that's now.
Yeah.
Without this millage, how do you pay for 211 people? That's a 20% vacancy rate. Yeah. And then you're going to have to hire people for
phase 3.
Yeah.
And then don't forget, the population of the jail has been rising.
It's been 40 to 50% more, I think, in just the recent years.
What you brought up an excellent point with the staffing, and that's really been a very prolonged issue for years. Different sheriffs have talked about the fact that, especially with the deputies that are on the ground overseeing the detainees, now they're having to institute mandatory overtime. That's costing the sheriff's office $5 million this year. At least. That's not counting all the overtime for the stuff we had early this year. And just in general, they've had very high turnover in so that they've had to use now recruits to fill in those gaps for the commissioned deputies. So really, it's been a big issue, and we believe that if the tax isn't renewed, this is probably the biggest chunk that the sheriff's office would have to take out of. It's just, a further decrease in staffing.
Okay. So that's pretty significant.
Yep.
So if not enough people go out and vote, if not enough people who vote say yes, and this millage is not renewed, what happens?
Most likely. Now, here's the positive side. If it doesn't get renewed, we could, if the city wants to volunteer to give the $12 million, especially after the debacle with the schools that we've seen, we don't know if that's going to be possible. That could be a way to fill it. But then again, there's a lot of obstacles. It's just the fact that the city itself faces a lot of costs. And, as we've highlighted in previous reports about the jail, there's really no coordination on a long-term plan for funding the jail in the future. So without those two steps, it's not foreseeable that they'll cover it. So on the other end, the sheriff's office will have to, cut costs somewhere. Now we don't know exactly where. They said that, it'll be staffing costs or programming costs. We don't know exactly what the numbers are, but either you're going to have to decrease already minimum services or below minimum in some cases services, or you're going to have to ask more money from the city. That's really the only way.
So one of the issues that most, if not all, city council members have is they want the sheriff's office to operate effectively, but they want them to be in the brass system. What's your take on that? Now, the sheriff has explained this before, why it's not to their benefit as an office. But what's your take on whether they should or should not be in the brass system? Oh, and explain the brass system.
Sure. The brass system is the city's, it's called an ERP. It's an enterprise resource planning system. It went into effect around, 2018, 2019. It sort of brings together all different financial functions for the city and is very helpful to be able to see the big picture of things. We at BGR have not looked specifically at that question, so it's kind of hard to answer that. But there is this, odd tension that doesn't serve us well as the public between the city and the sheriffs that, the sheriff has operational control of the jail and the city doesn't really have much ability to wage much influence on that or anything. But the city is responsible for paying for a good and sufficient jail. So there's kind of this misalignment between the responsibility to pay the bills and the responsibility to run the facility, which historically has been very well teed up for each side to just blame the other, to be like, well, a sheriff can always say, if I had more money, I'd be able to do a better job. And the city can always say, if the sheriff did a better job of running the jail, then things would be more efficient and we wouldn't need to spend as much money. And it's really hard to know where, how things should actually be. So BGR, we did a big report in 2022 called The Keys to the Jail that called for greater coordination, planning, actually coming up with a cooperative endeavor agreement to agree to voluntarily share information. I don't think we got into the level of detail about whether the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office should be in or out of the brass system, but that certainly would be the type of place where you would have that discussion that we were calling for, that would certainly be part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So meanwhile, voters have this millage on the ballot, and it seems clear to me that this is not about Sheriff Hudson. It's about the office.
Yeah.
And it's about the money that would be necessary, and actually not enough money, for the incumbent sheriff if we're reelected, or the new sheriff if Orleans Parish decides to choose a new sheriff. But he or she is going to have to rely on this millage funding or go in knowing that there's a huge gap. When does the current millage end?
So it's supposed to end at the end of this year. So moving forward, 2026 forward, they won't have revenues coming in for that budget, so they'll have to act accordingly. And I obviously I can't warrant to guess, but this is probably why they had it early on in the year, so that they could plan ahead and submit their budget whichever way the vote goes.
Is there a possibility of putting this on the ballot again? How soon could that be? Is that 6 months or?
I think there's some deadlines that's set by like the state on when you could.
I think it's
submit.
about 6 months, but
I'm actually not sure.
I think it's about 6 months.
But even then, you're cutting it pretty
then
close,
because
because budget season.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
right
and then it's would that be a good thing or bad thing to be connected with the mayoral election and city council elections and all.
That's right.
So
That's a good point.
That's another factor. Well, thank you very much to Rebecca and Nate from BGR. Don't forget the BGR report on the millage is on Facebook Live. You can take a look there. If there are other ways that people want to contact you with questions about the millage or about BGR, maybe they can even join BGR.
Of course.
How can they contact you?
They can contact us through our website. Also, our email addresses are all on there. We love hearing from the public. We would love if any of our WBOK listeners this morning wanted to join BGR and become a member. But we have a standing box on our website where you can submit ideas for reports, events, and we would follow up with you.
Okay, wonderful. So we've had a great show today. Thank you to Michelle Zellner, Amy Steller, Dr. Adrian Katner. Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Nate, for coming in. Millage early voting is ongoing. Please get out there and vote. And tomorrow we're going to have Councilman Joe Giarrusso on. So we've got a lame duck, so to speak, coming on and telling us what he sees going on with city council, with city government. And that's going to be a great conversation. That's all for today. Stay tuned for the Front Porch. You're listening to WBOK, the station that everybody's listening to.